This is your Pain Game podcast, where we talk about the game of living in and with chronic pain and trauma, getting to the heart of how to heal. I am your host, Lyndsay Soprano. On this show, I plan on discussing with doctors, chronic pain patients, holistic practitioners, loved ones, and anybody that is interested in having their voice heard in the chronic pain and trauma world that we live in. We all experience and interact with the world a little bit differently. And I often wonder why I am the way I am, how I respond to stressors in ways that others do not, how I respond to sexuality the way that others may not, how I have a photographic memory, but I can't remember where my phone is. And most of the time it's either in the refrigerator or next to the dog cookies. And this isn't going to pat myself on the back or anything right now, but this crazy bitch over here accomplishes more in one day than some people do in 2 weeks. And I have no fucking idea how it's possible. I don't. I am 100% sleep deprived, and I have been since I was 9. I live in physical and sometimes debilitating chronic pain 24 hours a day. I barely eat a morsel. I live on CBD and THC and loop in a little Prosecco while I can as well, right? And I've had a lifetime of trauma, which has led to physical disabilities as well, right? So we've just all winning things here. But I'm pretty damn successful, and I show up every day. Unless there's just an absolute act of God that comes in play, right? And I've always said that I wanted to donate my brain to science when I die, because what happens in this noodle of mine every day to accomplish what I do should not be physically possible. And as a successful business owner for almost 24 years, working from home, mind you, I could never, ever work for anyone but myself. And certainly not in an environment that I would have to constantly interact with people that I don't want to. Smell their fucking lean cuisine in the microwaves. Like, no, that's not for me. Sit in long ass meetings with PowerPoint presentations, also not my jam. And a lot of that is because, I don't know. We're going to talk about it a little bit today. I am incredibly OCD. I can't possibly figure out why people don't see things the way that I do on most days. But I consider myself to be pretty light-spirited and funny. And so what in the world explains all of this, right? Because I'm kind of tired of feeling a little bit nutso. But my guest today makes me feel not so crazy. One word. Oh, you're welcome. Meet crazy in just a moment. One word could mean neurodiversity, and that's the two of us. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about why I'm so very special.
Special, though.
So special. Let's talk about our differences, and that even in the midst of difference, we can still completely rock it. So without further ado, I'm going to bring another crazy ass woman into our life today. Katherine McCord.
Hi, it's good to be here.
And welcome to the Pain Game podcast.
I am so excited to be here.
Never say that, by the way. Welcome to the Pain Game podcast. It's the first time. So congratulations to you.
You know what? I liked it. I thought it was a great way, Pain Game process. Like, I kind of want to know what's coming next when you say that. It's like, oh, is there going to be like a Hunger Games type scenario, or is like
maybe we don't know what kind of slippery slope we're going to go on today. Can I introduce you?
Yes.
Can I introduce you?
Fine.
Katherine is the founder of the Neuroverse, a nonprofit organization dedicated to building inclusion and elevating neurodiversity, and is a people operations entrepreneur, which I practice saying that 32 times, who has multiple physical and neurodiversities ranging from MCAS, Google it, and seizures, to bipolar and OCD. So we've got all kinds of fun stuff going on. And whether it is revolutionizing HR technology, innovating DEI, which stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion, just in case you guys don't know, recruiting and HR for her clients, Katherine always brings everything back to her 3 missions. Actually, there's 4: integrity, inclusion, and innovation, and pee within 10 seconds before I get on a podcast.
Yes, literally 10, and I did clean my hands.
I'd like to start talking about what neurodiversity actually is to you and to others, and what that means to you. And let's take it from there.
So in the technical definition is that and the term has evolved. It was originally coined by an Australian sociologist named Judy Singer, and it was just, and who has autism, and she intended it to mean that difference is not a deficit, and that there's nothing wrong with different ways that people's brains process. Now it's kind of come to a smaller, more poignant definition of meaning a medically visible and or diagnosable difference in how the brain processes information and stimuli. So anything from like autism and ADHD, dyslexia, all of that, all the way over to PTSD, epilepsy, then all the way over to like OCD, bipolar, anxiety, all of that. So basically anything that changes your nerve synapses, that's neurodiversity. It makes you a little bit of a weirdo. That's neurodiversity. My personal definition is that we are the human octopuses and the ultimate weirdos, but all in the right way, right? That's kind of it. But it just means you think differently, you process differently, and we all do in a way, but this is in a very specific way. And it's funny because when you have neurodiversity, you can spot the others. Neurodiversity is freaking cool. And what's great is that science is finally catching up. Like you have studies
it is freaking cool.
Finally, like in the National Institute of Health, National Library of Medicine, Johns Hopkins, Harvard, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, that are figuring out that there are all these benefits and great things about neurodiversity. So yes, there can be disability. There is disability. I know we're going to talk about that too. But there are also benefits because as humans, we're designed to balance ourselves out. So when this thing over here works a little funky, then over here, we're freaking awesome. And it's really cool. It's really kind of a cool thing. So what we're finding out is that these aren't things that need to be cured. This is just how people are. And it's good. And they're the reason that all these great things, Albert Einstein, Maya Angelou, Dan Aykroyd, like even comedians. Like,
there's all kinds of incredible, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All of these amazing actors and musicians and artists and all writers and all of this. Yeah. Adventurers, creators. I mean, all of it goes on and on. And one of the things that's so interesting is I learned about neurodiversity, like, I don't know, a couple of years ago. Not that I didn't know it existed, right? One of my girlfriends has an autistic son and fairly autistic. But man, oh man, I mean, I don't even know what that means. You know what I mean? Exactly.
He's further down the spectrum. He's further down the spectrum.
And I love how she parented him and how wonderful he turned out. Because now he's an adult. But anyways, I find it so unbelievable because there's so many things that people thought about me, and I've not been officially diagnosed with any of this, but I want to talk a little bit about how we get diagnosed and the difference between actual diagnosis and self-diagnosis, because I know we chit-chatted a little bit about that. And I am one who, and a lot of people that listen to this show have been chasing diagnosis for themselves for their entire life, no matter what it is, whether it's neurodivergence or whether it's their pain or whether it's a stomach issue, whatever, we're all chasing some kind of fucking diagnosis.
Oh,
and
I get it.
Me nuts. So can you talk a little bit about that?
So first of all, I want to just say, I get it, folks, because I still have my primary neuro medical condition, which causes me seizures, TIAs, heart condition, all this kind of stuff, all stems from the same thing. These people still can't figure it out. But we're talking like decades into this process. This started when I was 17 years old. And so, I mean, like literally decades. So I get it. I feel you on this. Now, the opposite happened for me when it came to diagnosis of my neurodiversity. They were like, oh, this is clearly what's wrong with you.
Oh.
Like,
no, you're an octopus. Like,
clearly this is the thing with you. Now, my parents figured out some of this before I had a formal diagnosis. My mother was a nurse, and then my father grew up with a lot of neurodiversity, so they both looked at me and were like, oh, okay, this little child who is like too obsessed with this thing being done and gets into these very compulsory behaviors, she has OCD. That's what this is. And so they just designed their parenting accordingly, and they're like, all right, so we're just going to teach her how to work with that. We're going to teach her how to function as she is naturally, and how to accommodate herself, and then how to use those things to her benefit. And that's just what they did. And then when I developed other things, neuro-wise, including the bipolar, they did the exact same thing. It was just genius. It was a genius approach. I've told the two of them to write a book because I was like, I think more parents should do that. But so diagnosis is complicated. It is. It is a journey. It is horrible. It is frustrating. And there have been times in my life I've had to quit it and then restart it because I needed a freaking mental health break from
Absolutely.
getting a diagnosis.
Yeah.
So I get it. But on the neurodiversity side, and I will tell you the other thing that makes it freaking hard, both on the medical side and on the mental health side, is that up until tragically recently, like really and truly the last decade, the medical standards were all based on men. So ladies, we were just screwed because they just didn't think, oh, well, it's going to be different because it's a completely different body structure. I don't know why that never occurred to them, but it didn't. So it's, it was hard. And so there could be those reasons. There is the idea that some people still don't put a lot of weight into certain diagnoses, even though they're obviously in existence, like they're factually proven, but there are doctors that just don't spend a lot of time. Also, a lot of doctors just really aren't educated to neurodiversity in particular. It's very interesting. So a lot of general practitioners, things like that, they're actually not very educated when it comes to these types of diagnoses, so they will not spot them. Even mental health practitioners. My sister is a child's clinician, and she works with kids and helps them work through different issues, and a child counselor, I guess I should say. And she's talked about what little education she received on those types of diagnoses. Now, she went out on her own and learned,
Sure.
but
Yeah.
but most people probably don't. So you have to find a specialist. Let's start with that. Find a specialist. Find somebody who actually knows, and somebody who understands the full spectrum aspect, somebody who understands the pluses, the benefits and the disability. Research and find the right doctor. I do think that formal diagnosis is important if you feel like you need something explained, if you feel like you need to understand yourself better, if you feel like you need help communicating about yourself to other people, because then you can use the right words. It can also,
I like that.
For that, it's not about labels. It's just about communicating about yourself. These are the
Sure.
things, here's the things. It can help you find community. Like, oh, now I have this diagnosis, I can go find my peeps. And so that's all really well and great. Also, it can help you to get resources if you need them. So if you need accommodations, if you different things like that. So even down to things like Bose, the speaker company, a lot of people don't know this. They actually have a program to get people noise canceling headphones for free, but you have to be able to provide documentation showing that, yes, you have this diagnosis. And it's kind of like an accommodation process, basically like the paperwork that you fill out. So if you want to be able to get accommodations, you might need to also have a formal diagnosis for that. So, and companies, it's crappy that they do it, but they can require that you provide your diagnosis to give an accommodation, or not diagnosis, but specifics about your disability, not your diagnosis specifically. But so it does help to have the formal aspects completed. It does. It just helps. Not required though. So my husband found out because a doctor accidentally announced it to him, thinking he already knew that he was on the autism spectrum. Got accidentally diagnosed and outed a few years ago, well into his adulthood, well into his 30s. And researched it and went, oh, okay. And then other people in his family all got an actual diagnosis and they all kind of matched, you know what I mean? So it was like, oh, okay. But he doesn't feel the need to get the formal diagnosis now because he's like, well, we know that's what it is. He's like, I fit it to a T. He goes, my family's all got, is on the spectrum. And he goes, and I don't feel I would gain anything from it. He says, I already know how to take care of myself. I already know how to do these different things. But what he did do is he went through and started connecting to other people in the community and got better language so that now he can communicate better about himself to others. And that's made a difference.
I like that a lot in regards to communication, because I think one of the things that has popped up with me and researching this and listening to, and people actually saying not unlike what happened with your hubby, was just like, oh, you are totally on the spectrum. I was like, I am.
Wait, what?
I had no
What?
idea. But then when I started, I know. And then I'm like, "Why, thank you." And then I kind of started going down this slippery slope, reading more about it and looking at my behavior and how I operate and even behavior when I was a teenager. Some of course, which was stuff that happened was like traumatic stuff that would obviously create some form of behavior, but there were other things that didn't make any sense.
Right.
And as I keep going through my world over here, and I keep, like I started the show with, I don't know how I do all of these things feeling the way that I do. And it's like, it's nuts. And so when you talk about how it presents itself differently in women than men, how does it? And do you know why?
Oh, yeah. So our hormones are so vastly different that
Sure.
it just completely changes how we present. And so
Sure.
women
Okay.
are by nature more like cuddly social creatures. So for instance, just using the autism diagnosis, this is every single diagnosis has its own thing, but sticking to autism, um, the women will often be a lot more sociable. They'll still be relatively cuddly, although they're usually very particular about how they're touched. So it's like you could like I like to be touched like this. Oh, but don't do that. That's too much touching, or that's for too
Oh yeah,
long, or that
I don't have that.
yeah.
I'm like, everybody touch me.
And then there are people that it's different things are soothing to them, right? So it's just the different kinds of social aspects are very different. A lot of women that are on the spectrum are better about eye contact
Okay.
than the males are, things like that, just because we're different. But the brain is actually still very, its process is very similar in terms of the core processing
Sure.
features. And what's so funny to me is that those same women, they still miss the social cues. So they're very sociable, but then they do things that just seem so off. And you're just
Like,
like,
oh, why
what
did
is
you say that? And what did you do that for,
that was
Lyndsay?
not the way to say that, but okay. So like if you have a friend that maybe you can always tell the intentions are good, but they monologue a lot. They and that's the other thing. A lot of women, and it's not as true with the men, but with women, with females, there tends to be the self-absorbed perception with females on the autism spectrum because they monologue a
Huh.
lot. And so people think it's all
Interesting.
about them. And I'm like, no, no, no. They're just stuck.
Wow.
They're just stuck in their little monologue. Yeah. That's just how they communicate to you and give you information.
You
Yeah.
are blowing my brain open wide right now. And I'm trying to pick up the little bits and pieces that are all over the studio floor.
And you know what's so funny is with autism, like there's this what I call a misconception, but I'm going to specify why it is, and it's like about that people on the autism spectrum do not understand humor. I hear people say that a lot. I'm like, oh no, 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 they get it, but it's in a very different way. It's in more of like the way a mathematician understands an equation. It's like I see that this plus this equals laugh. And so, like,
Hmm.
when you listen to the comedians who are on the spectrum, or if you listen to my husband, who is hilarious and can just, I mean, rattle stuff off. He should be on stage, he just won't because autism. So, and his particular manifestation is like, no, thank you to that. No, thank you to a bunch of people looking at me. Um, but if you listen to it, it's a lot more of you can hear a lot more of a system to it than with a lot of comedians. You know what I mean? You can, in fact, there's some comedians that now I wonder about, like going back and listening to their routines. I'm like, I wonder if that's what this is. But like Hannah Gadsby is a great example of that. When you listen to her, you see the pattern, you see the buildup, and you can see where she learned to do this. You know what I mean?
Huh.
And
Yeah.
it's one of a very common connection methods that people on the spectrum use, whether male or female, is the humor, because they know, okay, people like what makes them laugh, so I'll make them laugh, so they learn to make people laugh, which I think is one of the few
Absolutely.
healthy masking things that people do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I understand, like on my side of things, if I was going to coin myself into this a little bit into this department, and becomes more and more clear, and I wish that I had more education on this, and my parents did when I was younger. I can't it's hard for me to understand how anybody could not be this way.
My husband says the same thing.
Does that make sense? Like,
No,
I know
it does.
yeah, and I'm like I said, my brain has kind of been blown open, and it's making me think of a lot of different things in my life, like in flashes. So thank you. I'm just trying to figure out how I'm going to piece them all together when we're done with this episode.
We'll have a session. We can discuss it and we can work through it.
God, I'm going to need more than a session. I'm going to need like a bottle of Prosecco.
But it's true. I'm the same way. I have to check myself because I've gotten so attracted to neurodiversity and how and getting to a point where I can communicate with people in a way that they completely unmask and just let their natural proclivities fly. And right. It's just a better communication, and it's a better way of thinking. And so I'm just like, but what's interesting is, so you're like, why isn't everybody this way, right? Yeah, you just said right. that. So yeah. There are multiple studies that have found evidence that humanity is moving toward neurodiversity. That's why we're seeing so many upticks in diagnoses and all this, is that humanity, that our natural selection process, the natural evolution of humanity has gone, oh, this seems like this is what we need now. So we're going to start developing these characteristics and start moving towards this. You can see research on that in the National Institute of Medicine and the National Library of Medicine, National Institute of Health. That's what I was trying to say. But it's fascinating. So we actually are kind of moving more that way. And now I'm like, I have friends that are neurotypical that mean a lot to me, but I'm like, there's just a different experience. And then I love autism so much that I married it. So I feel like, I've definitely got
I'm telling you, with mine, I tell you, he is so incredible. Like when you were talking too, his brain is like so incredibly beautiful.
Yeah.
Like to the point that I can't even with you right now. Like, I'm like, wow. And we have a joke like, oh, well, Rain Man showed himself this morning way earlier than usual.
Here we go.
We wake up very, very early, and he only really, really reads the like 600-page books, like these really, really thick, long books, and they're all historical. They're all documentaries that he watches, and he just like so fascinated with all of that and can rattle off, at 4:00 in the morning. Oh, hey, in the 1982 or in 1871, and I'm like, what? I haven't even had a cup of coffee yet. I am not ready for this.
Stop talking to me.
Literally, even on Ambien, the man the other night, I wish I had videotaped it. He's out cold and he goes, hey, honey, can I please meet Queen Elizabeth? And I'm like, what are you talking about right now? How do you meet Queen Elizabeth? And he goes,
like, I'm not sure that's allowed.
No, she's dead.
Yeah.
And how about?
Well, it's called a seance. Don't squash his dreams. It's called a seance, okay?
Then he
goes, be open.
Okay, well, how about King George? And this is, of course, in complete sleep. He doesn't remember any of it, but he's always thinking about historical things and historical data and data as a whole, and it remembers all of these different things. He calls it like he has a gerbil in his head, right?
Yeah.
And it's fascinating to watch him work. It's fascinating to watch how he processes things. And it's fascinating, as soon as I kind of picked up on a little bit within both of us, how much more patient I was.
Yeah. It does.
And how much more I was like, oh, that's just him being Rain Man. No big deal.
Exactly. Yeah.
And instead of going, what the fuck?
But see,
dude,
that's the
driving
thing.
Me nuts.
No,
that's
just embrace people. Yes. Embrace people as they are. One of my close friends has ADHD. And it was so cute too, because she came to me at one point and she goes, do you think I could be neurodiverse? And I went, oh, you didn't know? Like, what?
Apparently there's like, we're not in the minority.
Yeah, I was like, she definitely is. Like, it was so obvious. I was like, this is the cutest conversation. So the way that she thinks just baffles me, and it's so cute. And so like one day I was telling her about this really cool event that I got to go present at, and these amazing humans I had been surrounded by. And one of them is 3D printing human organs with the intent of transplanting them. And so you don't have to wait for a donor anymore. It's incredible stuff, right? First thing out of her mouth, I finished with the intent of transplanting them. And she goes, I wonder if you ate them, if that makes you a cannibal.
I love her.
First thing. And I go, okay, I need to understand your train of thought on that one. And she goes, okay, so you know how like they're 3D printing meat and vegans are saying that's still not vegan. She's like, she's like, maybe this would not make you a cannibal or would make you a cannibal. And she just extended that thought from this thing that she had read about 3D printed meat and
Right.
veganism over to cannibalism, which I just thought was delightful.
I mean, my first question is, well, are they making more livers than any of the body organs that they're doing?
Probably.
Because if
They
so,
probably will need to.
I'm in.
Yeah, like I need it. So because this is, we're talking about pain here on this show. So I had to have a hysterectomy a while back. And again, this is tying into how my neurodiversity works, I guess. And I was just infuriated because they would not give me back my uterus to feed to a shark. That thing put me through hell on earth for decades. I wanted to feed it to a shark. I had a friend with a boat. I had another friend with a shark tracking app. And we had set up the whole thing and they wouldn't give it back. It was so rude.
It's not just rude. I want to know why. Like when
they said that they weren't allowed. They said it was illegal to give it back.
I don't know. It's my body, my choice.
That's exactly
If I want to feed my ovaries to sharks, I feel like I should be able to do this. It's my body parts.
That's what I said. They did let me. Hold on, sorry, my cat's chiming in. She has opinions about that. So we did. They did let me donate it to science, so that was good.
Okay.
So somebody learned a lot from it, but still, it was not the satisfaction of watching it get consumed.
I would have loved to have heard that it actually happened. So I'm sorry for you. I'm really sad. You're welcome. So I know one of the things that we talk about in relation to this is, of course, embracing that. And with embracing comes inclusion, right?
Yeah.
And you work in human resources, which I find to be so incredibly fascinating for you, particularly to be working within HR. I also worked within HR, but at the technology level,
right?
Which is part of what you do. So can you talk to us a little bit about the human resources side of what you do in your business?
Yeah.
And yes, I can. And how you're doing that to help the over 1 billion people that are neurodivergent, that are in the workplace or going to be in the workplace or are leaving the workplace. So we're experiencing a shift right now in our household of leaving the workplace.
Yes,
and it is a major challenge. So within that realm, so can you just you don't have to chit chat about leaving, but can you chit chat a little bit about that, because it's super important.
Yeah, it is. So HR, first of all, I believe in completely revamping what people work in HR looks like, because we have been fucking it up for way too long. And so I have a very different way that I approach all of this. And the first thing that I start working with organizations on is I do classes and I do exercises with them to teach them to recognize their ego mechanism, which is a naturally occurring defense mechanism that every human has, and to respond, and how to stop it, and how to respond with curiosity. So to stop the ego and respond with curiosity, because if you don't, you're never going to reach inclusion. Because every time somebody disagrees with you, every time somebody has a different way of doing something, every time it's just not going to work. And you'll start defending the fact that you don't have policies that are inclusive because your ego mechanism kicks in. Sure. And it's not even conscious. It's completely subconscious. So you're not trying to be a dick. It just happens. So
let's be fair. There are some people that are trying to be dicks.
And then we fire them. I'm very big on firing people. I enjoy it thoroughly.
Amen.
I legitimately had to learn not to smile during firings. That was, and I'm not talking about layoffs. Layoffs suck. Okay, nobody wants to do that. But when somebody has earned being fired, I had to teach myself not to smile like a maniac while doing it. So with HR, so you start there. You learn the basics of communication and understanding. I provide a lot of education because what people don't know confuses them and scares them. It's just true. That's just how we're designed. So the more you help people understand, you create psychological safety, let them ask all their completely weird questions. And I have gotten some doozies over the years because people are finally allowed to ask something that's just been on their brain. I get asked stuff that would just it would just shock you that you're just like, really, why would you have ever thought that that was the thing? And but you just let it go and you respond and you smile at them, and because they really are curious and they're trying to understand. So, letting people work through it, letting them work through their own frustrations. So you get through all that. And then we learned that the accommodation process is ineffective and it's stupid. So, so Hewlett Packard is one of my shining examples that I like to use. They developed a fully neuro-inclusive cultivation program, and as a tribute to their founders who were in the neurodiverse community. And they basically just said, whatever you need to work, however you need to work, do it. So
Right.
people form symbiotic work cells, which is where like 3 different people come together to complete the 3 different jobs, but they all work together. Then you had people that would work while they walked. You had people that used noise canceling headphones, people that worked remote, people that worked in the office, people, I mean, just whatever it was. They sat on yoga balls, not desk chairs. And they found that that team became 33% more productive than the other teams. And then they started duplicating it, and guess what happened? That same pattern. Everybody became more productive.
I
So
love it.
that's what I start to teach these companies is no accommodations, unless it's something expensive. I tell people, let's come up with a number. And if it's going to be something over a certain amount, okay, that's acceptable. That's okay. You can have a process for that. But when 54% of accommodations are free, that's per the Department of Labor. And when another large percentage are $10 or less, why are we making people jump through hoops? It's just stupid. And nobody works the same way. Nobody. It doesn't matter if you're neurotypical. No. It doesn't matter if you have a disability or not. It doesn't matter. Everybody works differently. Everybody needs something else to make them more comfortable. And what's interesting is even people outside of the disability community or the neurodiversity community will see the accommodations and go, oh, that would be so great for me. Oh, I would really enjoy that. Oh, I would like that so much better. It works for everybody. It works for everybody. So I'm like, just change accommodations into standard options. Just when people come on board, here's a list of things that we offer. Here's a fill in the blank. Tell us what works for you.
It's genius.
Yeah, right. Who would have thought? Just
like, hey,
letting people
I'm
be
not
comfortable.
Sure, but you might act. Yeah, like I could never sit without. It's really hard for me to work without music. Next to impossible. And it's way easier for me to work with headphones on my ears or my earbuds in or something like that. It's the only way that I fully enjoy what I'm doing, and it gets in the way of just being distracted.
I love that.
And my spouse is extremely distracting. He just is. And so, I mean, he is. He knows he is. But
so
part of that is just him.
I was going to say,
that's just him. It's like, okay, sure, but
my husband has this new thing of because the hot tub is right outside of my office, of getting in there naked while I'm mid podcast, and I'm like, I can't focus on my.
That is wonderful.
It's
Do
great.
not slam him for that.
No, it's not a complaint.
Mine won't even put a toe in our hot tub. I'm like, will you please go with me tonight? No, I'm not interested in getting in a hot tub. I'm like,
okay.
More bubbles for me. Oh my goodness.
That's so funny. Because I always joke about it. That's my new distraction is my sexy naked husband climbing into my hot tub.
Well, I love it.
It's just, but seriously, but going back to the work stuff, so it's just really.
Well, that's an accommodation that you made.
It is.
I his workplace.
Need to be able to see out a big window to my husband. It helps my serotonin levels. But it really does work to let people work in a way that's natural for them. The brain functions better when it's allowed to work in a way that's natural and comfortable. The same thing for the body, right? If you're comfortable, then you're able to work better. So let's quit being weird about women having heating pads at work. Yeah. Let's quit being weird about that. Sometimes women need to recline to work because our bodies get super effing uncomfortable. And sometimes you just need to be able to be in a different position. So I really work with organizations from that standpoint and just helping them to learn to think differently, because really that's what solves the problem. When you change how people think and how they design, it completely opens the door, and then everything just kind of works from there. So you create the psychological safety, and then you just grow.
That promotes more happiness and more wellness and taking better care of yourself. And if you're somebody that lives in chronic pain or you've had all this trauma stuff that's happened to you, that doesn't make us feel quite as weird. Even though I don't mind being a weirdo, I think that if you put the spotlight on being a weirdo too, that's kind of well, I don't know. But if people don't give us the opportunities to be who we are, then we feel like we have to be somebody that we're not. And that's how I was kind of raised to be and how I grew up. And it's only fairly recent. I've always been crazy dramatic and over the top and all of it. I was an opera major and singing and hiking and biking and getting on stage and all those things. So I was never afraid of being out and in front of people, but I absolutely hate being in front of people at the same time.
I love it.
I don't like going to the supermarket. I don't like going,
I don't like to see other people, but I don't mind being in front of them either, which makes no sense.
Oh,
but...
yeah. So those, and that's confusing. For us, right? You're like, wait a second, why do I thrive in this environment so well, but I actually don't like doing this thing?
Oh yeah, I don't want to deal with other people, but I freaking love teaching. I freaking love to come in and teach and get things going. I love that stuff. I love podcasting. I love speaking on stage. But I don't want to people, and I don't want anybody to touch me. I have a very big personal bubble. Now, unless I really know you, I have friends that will come up and get a little cuddly with me or that whatever, and it's okay because it's them. But even then, after a few minutes, I'm like, that was enough of you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Get off. Thank you.
That was enough.
Thanks
Thank you for that.
But yeah, it's really it is really interesting to stop and just think about if you just let everybody and just support everybody and being who they are, the extraordinary things that will happen. And that's what I do in my work bubble is we all just let it go. Like we just hear whatever the thing is that you have going on with you, that's the thing. And whether it's something with your body, whether it's something with your mind, your nerves, whatever it is, we talk about it, we collaborate about it, we accommodate each other, and it just works beautifully. And it makes everything so much more effective because nobody's hiding. There's never that guessing game. Everybody is on the same page about everything. And then everybody's allowed to thrive in the way that works for them. And you're not forcing somebody into this weird thing that they don't want to do. It's like symbiotic work cells are another one that I preach super, super hardcore because I'm like, why are you making this person do stuff they don't want to do? They're not good at it. They don't like it, but they're really good at this part. But this other person is the opposite. So put them together.
Hello.
What difference does it make that people
is this thing
dramatic?
on?
I know. People makes no sense why we're doing that.
I know.
It makes zero sense. So just restructuring, redesigning, helping people to understand how to communicate with one another, how to appreciate one another. And then another one on the physical disability side that I have to get people on board with is stop projecting. Stop.
I was just going to ask you about this.
Stop assuming. Yep. Cut it out. Just stop it.
Yeah.
One of my favorite examples is ageism is a big thing, right? And it's a fairly safe topic to talk about. Nobody's gonna get all sensitive about everything. One of the examples I give is my grandmother, who in COVID was very sad because she missed her family, right? She's at the time she was 87 years old, and she missed seeing all of her great grands and all this. And so she got a cell phone, and she got a smartphone, and she learned how to use it. And then she wanted to learn Zoom. So we put Zoom on there. She learned how to do that. So she asks everybody in the family, her 4 kids, all of her grandchildren, to send her money. She gets the money. And then my mom says, her oldest child says, okay, now practice sending it back. And she goes, oh no, that's too hard. I can't learn that. And then looks at me and grins. I'm like, you just learned to be a con woman. That's what you did, you little sneakyhead. So I'm like, never assume that somebody can't do something. And the same thing with disability. And I've used myself as an example. I've talked about, I work 90 to nothing and nobody stops and thinks, oh, she has 8 disabilities. Between neuro and physical, I have 8 disabilities. And so, nobody stops and thinks. I'm like, you cannot project onto another person. Let them tell you what they can and cannot do. Never assume. I've had people tell me that in a job description, it needed to say somebody who can stand for X number of. I said, what do you mean by that? Well, where they work, it's very elevated where they need to be. I said, so wouldn't a standing stool work? And they're like, oh yeah, they can sit on a stool. I'm like, okay, so then they don't need to be able to stand for that many hours.
Right. Yeah, because it's all the lifting 50 pounds or these things, just the standard boilerplate that goes.
Oh, and don't put any of that on there. That sets me off. Yeah. I'm like, no, unless you're actually doing that on a regular basis, that's not a thing. That's not
give
a
me
thing.
a break.
Yeah,
give
stop.
me a break.
It really is true. So I tell people, stop projecting. Stop projecting whatever you're assuming onto these other people. And the same thing, by the way, even in the disability community, I see a lot of this. It's like, I can't do this, so therefore you can't because you have the same diagnosis. It's different for everyone. Everybody's case is different. Everybody's an individual. So I tell, like, one of the main things that I teach leadership in organizations is to learn that and to treat people accordingly and to trust that the person's not going to lie to you about what they can or cannot do physically.
Yeah.
Like, nobody wants to hurt themselves physically, so they have very good incentive not to lie to you about that. Like, skills, they might lie about that, but they're not going to lie about what might end up hurting them physically. That's not a thing.
Right. Like if I roll in my little wheelchair or whatever, which her name is Judy, by the way, Judy and I go rolling in somewhere. I actually am more comfortable in my wheelchair in public and in public spaces and such. And now I'm fine with it. Like, whatever. I don't care. I actually love the thing. Because I embraced it and we just got used to it in my family and my crew. And we're just like, all right, we'll just throw Judy in the back and let's go, you know? Otherwise, I'm sitting around here not being able to do any of the fun stuff that I used to do. It's just a little bit different.
Real quick, I have to tell you what just popped in my head. Is it like you're in public and the people around you don't know your name, and somebody goes, "Let's throw Judy in the back and go," and they think that they mean you, and they're just going to chunk you in the back of the car.
No, totally. That's what my friends do anyway, so it fits.
Oh my God, I love it.
But doing that, you know, in the beginning when I first got into it, it was almost 2 years ago now, which is, ew, that's hard to believe. Anyway, I was very, very self-conscious. Nobody around me in my personal circle made me feel that way. I know it's still a little uncomfortable for my mom, but I feel less disabled in a wheelchair than I do using a cane.
Yeah. You know what? Isn't that funny?
Why the hell is that? I have no clue
I can see
why.
that. No, I can actually see that. You want to know what my first thought was when you said that?
I do.
Is that your body is more comfortable than it is when it's up walking. And so that's why. And so because your body is more comfortable, then your mind is more comfortable.
No, I'm more comfortable in my chair.
Yeah. You're like physically more comfortable.
Yeah, because I'm more comfortable and I'm supported, and I know because my leg, it's not one leg, you know, it's both of them. And I just feel like, oh, great, it's just one more thing that's going to get like stuck on something, or I'm going to trip on it, or I'm going to end up like holding it on my shoulder to pick something up instead, like all these dumb things.
Yeah. You know what it is to me too, is physical disability can really suck sometimes. Like, and even neurodiversity can have some very fucking frustrating aspects. Like, my OCD is great for work. It's a pain in the ass when I've got to wash my hands 26 times, or when whatever it is that I've gotten stuck doing. Sure. Oh, by the way, I have a thing with even numbers. So yeah, try driving with that, where everywhere you look, there's odd numbers and stuff. It's a disaster for me. So I completely, I get it. And from the physical standpoint, you know, it's freaking hard. And so another thing that I'm very big on is teaching organizations. Number one, don't be nosy. You all you need to know is what the person needs and how it will help. You don't need to know why. And sometimes the reason that person, to your point that you've made several times throughout this show, and I really appreciate it, sometimes the reason that person has whatever it is because of a trauma.
Yes.
Or there's a trauma related to it. And you don't need to be bringing that up. That's not your business.
Yeah, it's none of your business what happened to me when I was in college, you motherfucker.
Yeah, it's not. It's not. But people get so nosy.
I know.
And I'm like, no, you don't need to know all that. You don't need to know their journey. And so,
thank you for saying that as well.
Yeah. And thank you, like I said, for bringing that up, because it's so very important to understand that. And you need to also understand that everybody at some point is going to need support from something, right?
Yeah.
But have it set up, already have it going, you know. And the same thing, you know, it's hard to learn to unmask. So I have a lot of people that are like, well, why can't people just tell me what they need? Why do I need to have a list of options? And I'm like, because most people have not been taught to take care of themselves. They've been taught to normalize, and that's incredibly unhealthy. So they, honest to God, don't know. And I have silenced so many rooms saying that. And people just get this look like, oh my God. I've had people approach me and go, I just started realizing all the times I was being harmful to someone. And they didn't mean it, right? But they didn't know that's what they're doing.
Intentional. Yeah.
Right. But they realize, like, oh, we have to give a lot of grace for that, to understand that people are learning to take care of themselves. We're just now coming into an era where it's acceptable to take care of yourself, which is
It's unreal. I know.
ridiculous that it took this long. It really is amazing. And that we're starting to get there. We're starting to have these kinds of conversations. And I'll say this to you, like to your audience, if anybody wants me to help you or anybody has any questions, reach out. I'm glad to help with whatever you're dealing with, because it's unbelievable to me the number of communications that I get that are still about discrimination. I mean, like blatant discrimination and harmful practices. It's so gross. And with disability too, like I love the curiosity aspect of disability. So I was watching this TikTok last night, and it was so perfect that it was right before this show, because
don't judge her that she's on TikTok.
This gentleman was this gentleman was doing who has a disability, and he talks and advocates about disability, and he was talking about how he was out at a store one time, and this little boy looks at him and goes, "Why does he walk different?" And the mom goes to shush him, but before she could, he goes, "He walks so fancy. I like it." Like really, because he was walking with a cane. He has cerebral palsy.
Oh,
and the kid thought it was
cute.
so cool, right? The kid thought it was amazing. And it was like, but what a good moment of that. Just because you notice that something is different, or just because you have a question about something, doesn't mean that it's from a place of ugliness. And so, like, one of the things that we have to practice, I feel, and this is just my opinion, on our end, the people with the disabilities and the weird brains and all this kind of stuff, is accepting the curiosity and letting people ask. And doesn't mean you have to share every detail. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not, but let people ask the questions. Like the days when I have my facial tics and stuff, like sometimes it'll look like I have some thriller moves going on, or like I'm trying to pick you up for a date, and I let people ask questions about it, and people want to know, does it hurt me? People want to know, can they do anything? They want to know, do I need help with my work? These are the types of things. So, but just let people get a little bit curious with you.
Yeah, and I know that that's hard, because that means that we have to let our guard down a little bit, and but if we're gonna get frustrated, or our word over here is fuckstrated, so you're more than welcome to use that. When you get fuckstrated, it's like, well, hold on a second. If we're not allowing others in to ask questions and be curious about us as well, then we're just as bad as they are, because we're gonna sit here and go, well, you don't care about me this way, and you don't care about me that way, and you're not taking care of, well, you haven't let anybody know about any of these needs. And one thing that I wanted to say, and I didn't want to interrupt you when you were talking about advocating, this is also not just advocating for ourselves that might be in the neurodivergent world, but also advocating for those that you know.
Yes.
Because we might not be able to communicate exactly what we're trying to accomplish here right now, but you might be able to try to make some change in the organizations that you're in, that you're seeing, that by proxy will help others. So
that's right. 100%.
So do it.
Yes. And support the people who are too. If somebody else speaks up, jump in and be like, yes, because the more voices that say it, the more likely they're actually going to fucking listen.
Yeah. And people will be more curious, and more change will happen, which is great.
Exactly. Yeah. And have like good, like listening sessions where you can all really sit down and plan things out, get down to the drawing board, make it fun. Like get in there and like just really work through some stuff. It gets interesting when you start just realizing like, oh yeah, like we have completely boofed this process. This is not inclusive at all. Let's fix this. Let's do this. And then you realize, oh, it's a better process anyway, because it's better designed. So, just it makes just more sense to get practical things. And you're right about the curiosity element, by the way. Like if we don't let people ask the questions, how do we expect them to learn and know? People go, well, Google it. Well, guess what? You don't get squat when you Google about this kind of stuff. You get the stupid ADA stuff. You get all that none of that actually is what people need or are thinking or so I'm like, we still need to have the conversations, but sometimes maybe just tell the person, not today, but let's talk about this in 2 days. I really want to talk to you. Let's put some time on the calendar. Because dude, I have my days. Trust me. Woo! I have my days where I'm like, if I hear one more stupid
amen,
I am going to lose my mind. Woo! And it's okay to be frustrated that not everybody knows, because it would be more convenient if everybody knew. We have to help them out.
Yeah, and also a little less fun, because we can play tricks on all of these people.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. It is kind of fun.
Oh my goodness gracious. This is so incredibly interesting. I'm sitting here like scribbling notes and like thinking through things that I could want to continue to ask you, and we're running out of time, which is a total bummer. But one of the things that I want to touch on real quick before we jam is trauma bonding and neurodiversity.
Oh, yeah.
And I know it's a tough one for us to end because we've had a little bit of fun here, but we briefly talked about it on our meet and greet. And first of all, I'd like you to explain what trauma bonding is. I know that a lot of our listeners already know. I certainly do. But why is it so much stronger in people that are neurodiverse than those that are, what do you call it when people are normal?
Neurotypical. The
Neurotypical.
normies.
Oh, you're just that's a typical
I don't like
view.
normies because it makes them sound like worms or something. I don't know. So trauma bonding is when the person that is the problem is also the solution. And so your brain associates them with the healing, because all your brain wants is for this bad thing to stop.
Sure.
So it doesn't care what the source is. So then it's this sick cycle of this thing that is hurting me is also bringing me back in and giving me the healing. And so you're addicted. You actually become chemically addicted to the fact that they are the healing person to you. And it becomes almost impossible to separate from them because they're the thing that makes you feel better. How could you ever leave that? Yeah. And it's harder for people with neurodiversity, because a lot of times they've been traumatized so much that it's just, even by society telling them that they're wrong in their basic human design, which is not correct, by the way. Science disagrees. But there's so much trauma there that it leaves more open. But also because our brains work differently and our bonding chemicals work differently and the way that we process works differently. And again, it varies from diagnosis to diagnosis. It can make you a lot more likely to attach. So for instance, folks on the autism spectrum, we keep using that one a lot, but it's because I'm married to a person on the spectrum, I think is why. People on the autism spectrum tend to have very close relationships. The people that they let in, they don't let go of. Yeah. And that is a trait of the neurodiversity. So if you compound that with active trauma bonding, they're never going to break that cycle. It's just
screwed.
And so it's just so much extra work. It's so much extra work for them. Also, because their brain is so ingrained in patterns, it's even harder to get it to deviate and to see. The other interesting thing, though, is that there are a lot of people in the neurodiverse community that will understand what's happening to them and will live with it anyway. They see it. They know exactly what's happening, and they choose to stay in it anyway. And there could be various reasons for that, so I don't want to go into speculation. But it is highly common that the people, and I've spoken to several people in the mental health profession about this, that were fascinated by it. They said, oh yeah, a lot of them know it's happening. They're perfectly aware. They just are like, well, people have always been kind of crappy in my life, so I guess we'll just go with this too. Yeah. One more.
Oh my God. That's terrible.
It's awful. Yeah, it really is. And so it's just a little bit more susceptible community, especially again, because they've been told they're wrong their whole life. So they're just like, well, this is just, I guess, what it's going to be for me. This is all I'm allowed. This is all I'm allowed to have. And it's just hooey. It's hooey. It's complete BS. I don't like it. And it's really tough. It's really, really tough to break that kind of relationship. It is. A lot of people, and it happens at work a lot. A lot. I can't tell you how many times I literally cannot even count the number of times that I've had candidates that they were like, oh my gosh, my boss is so awful. They yell at me, they scream at me, they throw things at me, they demean me, they take credit for my work. And then I get them another job and it's more money. And then the boss goes, no, but I could never live without you. I rely on you. I need you. You're my rock. And they stay.
Yeah. Ugh.
I see it all the time. Barf. And I see it on the HR side of things, when I'm dealing with employee relations. And so it's gross. It's gross, but it happens all the time. It's extremely common. So one of the things, by the way, to break that I encourage people is to set firm boundaries and not budge on them. And this will prevent it and also help you break the cycle of whenever this boundary happens, you just say, that doesn't work for me. And then stop and then walk away and let them know I'll resume working with you when the behavior changes.
So, okay, you've got a couple things coming up. You got some events going on. You've got, let's chit chat real quick about that before we hit the dusty track.
My first event coming up is super exciting. It's going to be the first in-person Neurodiversity Mega Summit at Grand Central Station in New York this August 24th, I want to say. August 24th, it's a Saturday. So if you want to come. We still have a few booth and table spots open. They're extremely affordable. And we do still have the exclusive sponsorship offer. So reach out. It's super affordable as well. So feel free to reach out to me if you're interested in participating or coming, just whatever you want to do. Just reach out, let me know. I'm super excited about that. Then I also have in October, from the 23rd to the 25th, we're going to be hanging out at the UTA Planetarium in DFW and then Pocket Sandwich Theater. And we're going to be collaborating to actually build a better world of work. So this isn't come, sit, get yacked at for a few days. This is, we're going to dive in together and we're going to collaborate and we're going to create. Food is provided and it's good Texas food. Proud of my home state. We have really good food. We have great food, great people, awesome educators. They're going to kind of pitch in and kind of guide us through different projects. Highly, highly, highly recommend you come. It's going to be a small, intimate event. So feel free to check that out at peopleverse.org.
Okay, so that one's peopleverse.org. The other one in New York is
the Neuroverse.
Neuroverse.
Yeah,
okay.
Very space themed. Very space.
So she's a space cadet, ladies and gentlemen. Well, join the Neuroverse with us, people, because it's a really wackadoo place to be in.
It is super fun.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you so much for your time. I'll put all this stuff in show notes and in social as well. And it's just been wonderful learning a little bit more about myself and other loved ones in my life.
Oh,
and
good.
Getting to know you a little bit and getting to know you a little bit better too. I really appreciate it.
It's been a blast, actually. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been very fun. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. You are exclusively invited to share this Get Curious VIP pain journey together. Let's get to the heart of how to heal with you by my side. Let's connect and hear stories of strength and grit. I am here. So is Katherine. We are here to help provide a safe place for you to be vulnerable, ask questions, get curious, be honest, whatever it is, we've got your back. So please follow the Pain Game Podcast wherever you digest your podcast content. We will be there. Visit us at thepaingamepodcast.com and follow us on all the socials. Thanks for listening, my little VIPs. Catch you on the other side.